introduce myself. I'm Officer Lateral with Colorado Springs Police Department. I am the recruiting unit. So if you ever need any help with recruiting or interested in the police department at all, I'm the person to get a hold of. I have cards and brochures, and I'll hand them all out too, just in case anybody wants to contact me, has questions. It's so cool to see that some of you guys are actually going through the process. So yeah, while you're going through it, hit me up. A lot of the paperwork kind of stuff is separated and done through human resources. So you'll, like, I might not be able to answer some of your questions. I'll have to forward you to the correct person that can, but I will do that for you. So yeah, so again, I'm just going to do this presentation just real quick. If we can just hold questions or write down your questions until the end, just in case I do cover it. And then at the end, I mean, I am very excited to hear your guys' questions. If it's something you're comfortable with asking, you know, in front of everybody, that way everybody can kind of benefit from the answers that we pull. And then yeah, I mean, I literally have all day. So, and then there's stuff afterwards. You just want to talk to me personally, we can do that as well. Alrighty, cool. Okay, so. This is a quick agenda, we're going to skip that. That's just one of those things you have to do when you do a slideshow, right? You have to put the agenda on there. So, minimum qualifications. I'm sure that most everybody here has kind of gone on the website and seen what our qualifications are. But I'm going to hit some of the kind of big ones we get real quick. And again, if you're going back through it, you just want to look at our website. Our website's pretty good. It has all the information on it. It's just the CSPD.coloradosprings.gov. And you just click on careers, which is one of the top hyperlinks there. But to be eligible, you must be 21 years old by the date of hire. The date of hire is the start date of the academy. So whatever academy we're hiring for, like the one some of you guys are in the testing process for, will be the November 26th. So you just have to be 21 by November 26th. Can't be convicted of a felony. I know this is shocking. No domestic violence. You have to have at least 60 credit hours. I'm sure most people here are good with that. We do have an alternative education program, which means you can come into the department with only 30 credit hours because CSU Global has accredited our academy and given us an extra 30 credits, which brings you back up to 60, but I don't think that's... Is anybody interested in that program or not? I think we're all probably past that. You must be able to legally work in the United States. This is actually kind of cool. So as long as people have the paperwork to work in the United States, we will hire them. So that's kind of cool. We get people in our department from all over the world. You can't be dishonorably discharged from the military, and you must possess a valid license from whatever state, as long as it's valid. If you are hired with us, you're going to have to transfer your license, obviously, to Colorado. All right. Okay, I don't think there's anybody here that's lateral, so I'm going to just skip this. Unless, is there anybody interested in the lateral program at all? Okay. Have that in there just in case. So.
Can I talk about that just real quick?
Absolutely.
If you're a police officer in the state of Colorado, you're under the same pension plan, so it's transferable. So if you are in CSPD and you want to go to Denver after 3 years, or vice versa, Denver to here, then you can transfer and laterally transfer. And it's a much shorter academy. It's what, 2 weeks?
For Denver?
No, for the laterals.
Our academy, we put our laterals through the entire academy again. But that's just what we've decided as our department, because everybody we hire to go through the academy, we pay you to go through the academy. And so it's kind of like a team building experience anyway. And since we're paying you, we want that to be part of your job. So you just go through with everybody else. You just get paid more while you're going through. What's cool is our academy is certified through the state, through the post board. So once you graduate our academy, you have to test for the post test, which we prepare you very well for. And then you're certified at that point to be a police officer in the state. Obviously, we're hoping you stay with us because we paid you to go through the academy and you work for us. But yeah, you can go wherever in the state. Of course, you got to look at the different agencies you want to work at and see what their requirements are. Some agencies, the bigger agencies, want you to go back through an academy of some sort, even if it might be shorter. And then there's some agencies that will be able to just hire you on. A lot of smaller agencies can just hire you straight on if you have that post. So it does, our academy does give you quite a bit of flexibility if you decide maybe there's somewhere else you want to live. Good.
Post is peace officer standards of training.
Yeah, sorry. Does everybody understand what that is? It's kind of like the governing board for the state for police officers. So if you're certified in, it's the state saying, yep, they did everything to make this officer, make you a good officer by our standards. And so most departments across the state, that's what they look for.
But if you go from department to department, the only thing I was going to mention is that you don't lose your pension, start over.
Yeah, our
Totally
pension is through the FPPA, which is a state-funded program. So as long as the other department that you go to uses that same program and not their own, then you won't lose your pension. Okay, cool. And another thing about pension too is you're vested with us after 5 years. So even after 5 years, if you decide to quit and go to do something else, you're not going to lose the money that the city invested in you and your own money too. Okay, more kind of disqualifying behaviors. Biographical, really what that's talking about is omitting information from your application purposely. Not like, oh shoot, I forgot to mention I lived with a buddy for 6 months at this location, something like that. And obviously we want to know all that stuff, but it's more like, yeah, I worked for Chick-fil-A and stole something and they caught me stealing, and instead of firing me, they said, you can just resign, that kind of stuff, and you don't put that on your application because it's embarrassing. That's purposely admitting something that's the same to us as lying. If you lie on anything in your application, you're done in the application process with us. I always try to make sure and tell people that it is much, much better to, just spill everything out, say this is everything I've done in my life, and let the department look at it and make the final decision for several reasons. First is if you ever want to be a police officer somewhere else and you apply, on every application, just about any department does, they ask, where else have you applied? So if you go to Woodland Park, they're going to say, where else have you applied? You say, I applied to Colorado Springs. Woodland Park PD is going to call us, like, hey, John Doe said he applied down at your agency. Can you tell us why he didn't make it or what happened? And then you sign a waiver whenever you apply in different agencies, and so they say, here's the waiver. We say, yep, here's their file. They lied about this on their application. So my point is, if you ever plan on being an officer, you might not make it here for a decision you made in the past, but you might still be able to be an officer in Woodland Park or somewhere else, as long as you didn't lie about it. Once you lie, you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot of being an officer ever. So the department is really good at kind of looking at current decisions instead of past decisions. We have time dates, and I'll show you some times that you have to pass after doing a bad decision before we can look at you. But they do really well at kind of seeing who you are now instead of the mistakes you've made in the past. Does that make sense? Okay. Financial. A lot of this, it's not that you have to have perfect credit to be a police officer. I had crummy credit. I came out of college, made some bad decisions, but I was paying on my credit, and I was honest about it, and somehow they decided to still hire me. So, but most of that is like not paying child support or purposely writing checks on a blank account. So you know you don't have any money. You have no intention of paying for whatever it is, and you write a check on it. Basically, it's, stealing, that kind of stuff. Okay, integrity, that kind of goes, it's very similar to the biographical. This is just being truthful throughout your application process. So just make sure you're truthful. If you remember something like, oh, I forgot to say this, just call up your background investigator, say, hey, I was just thinking the other day, this happened, that kind of stuff. It's what we're really looking for is when you're purposely trying to lie about something or hide something from us. Okay. Drugs. We have, like I said, dates on certain things. We don't expect people to never have tried marijuana. I mean, you're in Colorado, but if you've used it within the last 18 months, then we can't hire you. We're looking for, I mean, yeah, okay, you tried it, it was a bad decision, whatever, it's not a habit for you. So that's why we kind of set those 18 months. We even have it for drugs. If you use drugs, we have a 3-year time period. As long as you haven't used drugs in the last 3 years, you're still eligible for the application process. Is there any questions on that? I kind of stayed here for that just because of the Colorado marijuana thing. Really good? Okay. Alcohol, a lot of that's like DUI kind of stuff, or drinking while at work when you're not supposed to. That's kind of what they're looking for, not that you drink, period. Criminal behavior, I mean, that's pretty self-explanatory. If you're dealing drugs, you're probably not going to be a police officer. If you're doing something, even if you haven't gotten caught yet, if that's illegal, then you're probably not going to be a police officer, at least for now. And then driving history. Driving history, I always kind of get a question about. It's not saying that you can never have a ticket and be a police officer. We look at what we call the totality of the circumstances. So, I'm 37 years old. I got 4 tickets in my life. That's a little bit different, over 20 plus years getting 4 tickets than, hey, I've gotten 4 tickets in the last year, right? So that's kind of what we're looking at. We're not saying that, there's a certain amount of tickets or whatever. It's more of what your driving history is and what your driving behavior is now. We get, you make mistakes, you get in traffic accidents, you speed. I mean, we've all gotten tickets, that kind of stuff. It's the how many in a certain amount of time. Does that make sense? Okay. There's not really once you have 4 tickets, you're done being an officer. Sorry, good luck. Anything like that. It's just more of how you currently are and what it's been like in the past couple years. All right. Here is a little more details on the marijuana, just because we're in Colorado. It's legal in Colorado, but it's still federally illegal. Can't use marijuana in the last 18 months and apply. Can't use it as a city employee. You can't cultivate it, any of that kind of stuff. Our salary, just because this is the fun part of the job. So the recruit salary right here, the $24.64 an hour, that's while you're going to school in the academy. Our academy is not a women academy. You go there during the day, and while you're there, we're paying you $24 an hour just to learn. So doing this right here, you get paid $24 an hour. The moment you graduate from the academy, the day you graduate, your pay bumps up to $27.15 an hour. And that stays the same for the next year. That's kind of your probationary year. You do on-the-job training. We're going to go into that a little bit. But for that next year, you're getting paid the $27.15. On your graduation date anniversary, the next year, you bump up to the P3 level. It's $51.86, $29.92, almost $30 an hour. Automatically, as long as you're in good standing, like you're not being investigated for something you did, anything like that. Just call it good standing. So as long as you're doing your job, you're going to get the automatic pay raise. The year after that, on your graduation date, you automatically move up to the P2 pay. The year after that, graduation date, P1. Once you're at P1, this is our top pay right now for a patrol officer. And that's per hour. So the only way you're going to get more money than that is if you test for sergeant, if the city council decides to give us a pay raise, which we just did in January, and it looks like we're going to get another one either in July or next January, thanks to the city passing their stormwater, and overtime. So overtime, we're hourly, so that's per hour. If you work overtime, it's time and a half. Okay, any questions on any of that? All right. So we just closed applications. I know some of you guys were putting in the process. So right now, again, thanks to the city passing some of the stormwater stuff, we're going to have an extra 100 added to our minimum manning, basically, to our authorized strength by 2022. What's important for you guys to know is because of that, we're going to be running academies every 9 months, and we're going to run 48, which is our max, through each academy. So the November academy, I know some of you guys are testing for. We're going to open applications again, probably November, October time frame this year for another academy next, July, August, and we're just going to keep doing it until we get past the authorized strength, which is probably going to take quite a few years. So I guess we're going to be running academies every 9 months for the next 4 to 5 years. Okay? Just be prepared because the application process is a long process. So you really should start looking a year to 10 months out from when you want to be employed. Okay, here we go. Here's the written test. So we use the National Police Select Test. I know some of you guys said you had taken it. Measures your arithmetic, reading comprehension, grammar, writing, and we are doing this every Tuesday and Thursday through April. One session a month is designated for out of state. That doesn't really apply to you guys. So here's the big thing, the 30% of your total score. So you must get a 70% to pass. And to even be considered, you have to get a 70 on the test. And you'll know that the day you take your test. She'll stand up, Miss Cassie Mills runs all the tests with Human Resources. I think there's 150 questions, and she tells you you have to get at least this many right. You will know your score the moment you hit submit. That's kind of cool, you don't have to wait. They will recalculate and send you an email saying, hey, this is what your score was and that kind of stuff, but you'll know it by the time you finish the test. Okay? Again, that's 30% of your grade. So the next slide I'll talk about the oral boards, and we'll spend some time on that. But we're a testing-based application process. So it's a lot different than a lot of the other jobs out there where it's resume, a little more one-on-one interviews. This is it's a test. And you're scored on each of these tests you do, and then you're listed from the top score to the bottom score. And then on all that list, we usually send about 150 onto the backgrounds. So we'll just take the top 150, we'll move them on to backgrounds. Everyone else we say, thanks, but we just can't hire you right now unless some of those 150 start saying, no, we're not interested anymore, which happens. And so then we start taking some of the top from the ones that didn't get picked. Okay, any questions about the test?
How many do you have take the test?
That's a good question. So usually we have 1,000 to 1,500 applications, but don't be overly discouraged by that. We have about a third of the people that just don't show up for some part of the testing process. So I would say about 700 to 800 people actually take the test. And then you have some of those that just don't pass, and then you have some that just don't show up. It's amazing to me how many times, or how many people just won't show up. It's literally about a third for each process. So the test will be a third on each time we do the test that doesn't show up.
Is it computer this time around?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we have a computer lab. It's actually, we're kind of implementing new processes and stuff, but yeah, it's a computer lab. We hold, let's say it's 32 in the lab right now. So
Okay.
we're kind of doing more of that continual testing. We used to have more of it, like everybody show up on 2 dates. There's a gazillion people there, and now we're doing little smaller groups.
Okay.
So it's a little easier to kind of schedule it for different people. Good question. Was there a question?
Yeah, that's down at the POC, right?
Yes. Yeah, Police Operations Center downtown, South Nevada. Yeah. Good question.
Nick, do you have some suggestions for preparation for that element?
The written test? Sure. So we send you out an email once you sign up for the test, hopefully everybody's gotten that. It should be an automated email, and you should have gotten it about 3 days after you did your application. That email gives you some reading that you must read before you take the test, because part of some of the questions on the test go over that reading. And then it also gives you a link to the NPSI, it's like a third party who develops the test for us, gives you a link to their study guide. Their study guide, they do charge you for, so I can't tell you to do it, but like I said, we are based on these scores. So I would do everything I could for me to make sure if I was spending my time doing this, that I got every preparation thing I could do done. You can also, I would Google like preparation for police test. I would Google information about this test and see what people have to say about it. And you can do your research, just like you're doing, in your classes. I would do the exact same thing for the test. I'd work on, the math skills. You can't bring in calculators, so that means just brushing up on, math in your head or using a piece of paper, all that kind of stuff. That's what I would do.
I will say the study guide is $10. It's not a whole lot of money. And it was a really good example of the questions that were, because there were some I was like, okay, how are you going to ask that? And so I found it really useful.
Perfect, thank you. Good. That's good to hear.
Yeah, because there were some of those I was like,
Okay, yeah, I would do it, but I can't tell you to do it, it's not required, so. Okay. Oral boards, okay, here's the big one. So it's 70% of your total score. So again, the written test was 30%, the oral boards are 70%, we combine the scores, and then that's literally how you're rated for us, is those scores. The oral board, we call it an oral board because it's not an interview.
Nick, could you talk about the banding process too?
Sure.
Even if you pass everything, because they probably don't understand that.
Yep, I'll talk about it. So, yeah, the oral board is not a typical interview, which was a huge shock to me when I joined 12 years ago and came up from Texas, and I'm sitting thinking, yeah, I'm pretty good at talking to people, right? And I sit there and there's 4 people sitting across the table and they hand me the questions and go, here you go. And stare. So that's literally how we do it. Because of the liability, we have to treat everybody exactly the same while they come through the testing process because of the standards and stuff that are being set across the nation right now. So what we do is we have the questions composed before the oral boards even start. They're approved through all the chain of command, and then those questions are provided to the oral board person, the people doing the oral board, and they have to stick to those questions throughout the interview. So, for example, we'll have 2 officers come in. Usually it's only 2. They'll be in a room like this. They'll probably be sitting on this side and have you sit on the other side. They'll introduce themselves. They'll have these questions and they'll explain that they're going to be reading you these questions, and they have to literally read them to you verbatim, and that they can't add anything to it. So if you say something and they're like, I'm not sure what that means, they can't ask you, well, can you explain what that means? They can't do that. They have to treat everybody the same, so they can only ask the questions that are on the paper. They can only ask them in that order. So it's not a whole lot of give and take. They're not engaging you. They're going to be sitting across from you, and they're going to be doing a lot of writing notes. That's good. They're writing a lot of notes. That's good, usually, unless you're saying something crazy. They're writing it down. You're like, ah. But yeah, so it's kind of impersonable, honestly. But what I like to tell people, I was a theater minor in college, so it's a monologue. Really, that's what it is. It's a monologue about you. So make sure you're getting all the information out there, because they can only judge that on what you say. So I always give an example, one of the questions could be, why do you want to be a police officer in the city of Colorado Springs? A great answer is, I want to serve the city. I want to make a difference in people's lives. Those are great answers, right? But how is that different than all the answers that the other 700 people are going to give? It's not. It's the exact same thing. While it's a good answer, it's not memorable, right? So, suggestion I say is start writing down stories or experiences from your life, even before you go to the interview. That way you're kind of brainstorming and almost creating a toolkit of different experiences you can go back to and pull out for whatever questions they ask. Because you're not going to know the questions until you walk in there. So prepare for whatever questions they may ask. So I would do good experiences, bad experiences, times I failed, times I almost failed, continued to push, and then succeeded. You know what I mean? Those kind of things. So, for example, with the story about why you want to be a police officer in Colorado Springs, let's say you had a DARE officer when you were growing up in elementary school, or you had an officer that lived down the street that invested in your life. So you said, yeah, when I was growing up, I had this officer. He did this for me. He changed my life. I was getting in trouble. He invested time into me, and because of that, I'm now this person, and I'd really like to do that for somebody else. That's something that, as a board member, I'm going to remember, right? That's a little different than saying I just want to serve my community. Does that make sense? You guys kind of get that? Okay.
Question, are they doing a physical test at all?
No.
They should.
No physical test. Anything else? I just want to make sure everybody understands that board. Yeah.
Well, how long do the boards usually take?
30 to 45 minutes.
Okay.
No, it's not too bad. And the time's yours. I wouldn't say you need to take up the whole time, because I've been actually a board member for many, many years, and there's been great interviews that were quick. There's also been terrible interviews that were quick. So the time's yours. If you feel you need to use it, use it. But you still kind of have to be a little cognizant of the time you're using, because once the time is up, you're done. If they don't get through all the questions, it's done. They kind of try to help you a little bit on that, and they'll be like, yeah, we got to kind of move a little bit here, trying to let you know that you're running out of time, just so they can get you through. They want to get you through all the questions. They want to hear all the answers. But yeah, just pay attention to the time. Make sure you're getting all the information you need in the time allotted. And just and then something else to think about too is that some of the questions might take a little longer than others. So don't panic. If you're like, oh man, I spent 5 minutes talking about that last answer. I might not get through them all, because then the next question might be something real simple. You're like, nope, this is what I'm going to do. This is what I would do. Boom, done. So.
Are they planning on going back to the physical ever, or are they just not going to do it?
We want to. Yeah, it's just can't really talk a whole lot about it. It's more of we're still looking at what and how we want to proceed with it.
Okay, gotcha.
So, the academy is very physical, so I always tell people there's not a whole lot you can do to prepare for the academy as far as like studying and all that kind of stuff. I mean, we're going to teach you everything at the academy, and it's a very in-depth academy, but you can prepare physically for it.
Yeah.
So while you're going through the academy, I mean, while I went through it, I came out of the military, so I had been forced to be in shape, and so while I was there, the physical aspect of the academy was actually the fun part. So that was the part I went out and was able to, okay, there's not release my stress because there's not somebody looking over my shoulder or whatever, and so that was the fun part. But there was other people within my academy that weren't in shape and hadn't prepared on that, and that was definitely not the fun part. That was also another stressor. So I always tell people, it's like, you can prepare for this part. So I would prepare and make that the fun part, so that the hard and stressful parts have something else to kind of release that stress. The academy can be a lot of fun. There's going to be stress too, not going to lie. Policing is a stressful job. We have to see how you do under stress. So it can be stressful. Yeah.
Is the academy like Monday through Friday, like 8 to 5? Is that usually how it runs?
It is.
Okay.
So yeah, it's like a normal job. Usually they start a little bit earlier, around 7:30-ish time frame. But yeah, it's 8 hours a day. And if you happen to go longer, they have longer training, and they release you early the next day. but it's 40 hours a week, Monday through Friday. Now, they try to do it during the day, but there are definitely times where they schedule adjust because we need to do training at night. So we do driving at night, shooting at night, scenarios at night. To do all these different things, we have to have a certain amount of hours at night. So there's definitely times where you'll come in at like, 1 or 2 in the afternoon and have to do training. They try to make sure that they do that like towards the end of the week, or they let you out early the day before, so it's easy to kind of schedule adjust for you, but they do definitely do some night stuff.
Quick question. How likely is it for someone who has, done a little drug or something like that 4 years ago? Everything else is good except for that one little area, and it's just once or twice or something like that. How likely are they going to actually go?
So it's hard to say how likely as far as like a percentage. What's cool is the department, like I said at the beginning, looks at the totality of the circumstances and who the person is today. The chief, the chief is awesome. We have a great chief. He knows that people make mistakes in the past, and not only that, but he sees the value in those mistakes. So there are definitely like times where people have had a bad past, but now they're amazing officers because they can relate to other people that have that past. I've never smoked drugs, I've never done marijuana, I never did any of that stuff. So when I'm talking to somebody who, a teenager who's maybe having problems with it, I'm not going to relate to that person quite as well. I definitely try to, but if there's another officer who maybe has struggled with that in the past, he's going to have that connection a lot better with that person than I will. I'm going to connect with different people in a different way. So we look for different pasts, different things in people, because we want a diverse force that can relate individually with these people that we interact with. So we definitely do hire people that have had troubles in their past. There's certain things we just can't overlook, felony convictions, that kind of stuff. There's just certain times we can't do it. If you're dealing like hardcore drugs, even if it was 10 years ago, more than likely you're probably not going to be an officer. If you've used drugs once or twice, multiple years ago, there's definitely a chance you can be an officer. What happens is at the very end of everything, and we're going to kind of hit this a little more, but your entire packet, your testing, your background, all the interviews, all that stuff is put into a packet. That goes into a boardroom like this where the chief, deputy chiefs, human resources, all the bigwigs go in for like 3 days long, and they go through and they pick the 48 they need. So everything in your life, your application, your interactions with us, all that comes into effect, and we look and they choose the ones they want to pick.
How many people usually get to the oral board? Like out of the 150, do you invite them all to the oral board?
So we invite close to 700 to the oral board.
Oh, okay.
So that the written test and the oral board, we let anybody who passes the initial application. That initial application is it's just a way for us to computer screen the people and making sure that somebody would say, oh yeah, I smoked marijuana yesterday. The automatic disqualifiers is all it's looking for. So once everybody completes the application, the written application, we let everybody do the written test. Who signs up and gets a time, as long as they show up, they can test. Now, everybody who gets a 70 or higher is scheduled for the oral board. So, there could be 1,500 that show up, but usually it's not that many.
I had a question about just consciousness of preparations through the process and some of the logistics. What is the uniform at the academy level for them? Do they need professional dress? Should they start moving into that now, or do you have them in uniforms in the academy?
So that's a great question. We provide everything for them. And it's like a polo shirt, it's kind of a gray color polo shirt, and then they do black like BDU pants from the military surplus store.
Looks like there's a picture right there.
Yep, that's them right there. So that's in the academy. We do give them their actual blue police stuff that they wear every now and again while they're doing scenarios and that kind of stuff. But 99% of the time, that's what they're wearing is their gray polo.
Okay, and then do they, have lunch breaks during that time? And then also, just to piggyback on that, do you have suggestions for what they should wear to the interviews?
Yes, those are great questions. I love it. So, yeah, the schooling really is just like school here. You have your own lunch. We try to teach you like adults. We're not screaming and yelling at you. It's still what we call paramilitary, so you have to learn how to shine boots. When somebody comes through, sorry about that. When somebody comes through, they you have to stand to the side, you know, and yes sir, no ma'am, thank you, you know, kind of like the chivalrous stuff, the normal stuff that most people do anyway. We expect. Let me turn this off just 1 second here. I should have done this before. All right. So yeah, so we call it adult-based learning. We're not going to be, you know, like the military where we're in your face, spitting and screaming and yelling and all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, it's still a little more strict as far as you know, making sure you show up in time. Yes sir, no ma'am, you know, that kind of stuff. And then as far as your dress, when you're going to the application stuff, what I always say is that every interaction you have with us is part of the application, right? And that probably should be everywhere, even if you decide not to be a police officer. But every impression, I mean, even if it's a first impression, you're still trying to make a good impression. So if you showed up in jeans and whatever, I'm going to try to listen to what you say and judge you on what you say, because that's, you know, how we all wanted to be treated. But it's still kind of hard to overlook somebody who shows up that hasn't taken any time to make sure that they look professional, right? So I would make sure you dress nice, whatever that means to you. When I showed up to my interview, I was in the military, so I had my dress blues on in the Air Force, which is a tie, you know, pressed military stuff. I mean, I wanted to walk in there and have the wow factor. I mean, I wanted to tilt everything into my favor that I could. That's something that's very easily a little preparation, and it's something you control that you can tilt into your favor.
Is there any opportunity in the process for a presentation of material, like a resume or a writing sample?
We offer the opportunity to attach your resume to your initial application. I'll be honest, we do not look at it.
Okay.
So if it makes you feel better, go ahead and put it in there. But I'm not going to look at it. Okay, we literally have close to 600 applications. I can't go through 600 resumes, I just can't. So we base it off your test. Once you do these tests, and once you're kind of banded, and I'll explain this a little more later, but we select those 150, the top 150 people to move on to backgrounds. Then you fill out what we call, it's like a personal history questionnaire. It's like a resume that we have specific things we want you to answer, but it's 50 pages long. Yeah, and it takes forever. Like talking about roommates for the last 10 years, and I mean, crazy stuff. So if you get selected to move on, just be prepared. You're gonna have to start digging in your past and kind of finding some of the addresses you've lived and people you've known, and I mean, we'll help you try to figure it out. But yeah, it's a long process. Yeah.
Is it similar to like a military clearance?
It is, except ours is even more strict. I had a secret clearance when I came into the police department, and yeah, this was like crazy. We have top secret military guys that don't make it through our process because of the things we find. So it's even more strict. It's very intrusive. I'm not gonna lie to you. I want you guys to know what you're getting into. It's extremely intrusive. They're gonna find everything. That's why I tell everybody, just be honest. We don't expect perfect people. We don't want perfect people, because you're probably not as perfect as you're saying you are anyway. There's probably things you've done in the past that we didn't find. So we'd much rather know who you are and know what we're getting into. We want people who are real people who can relate with the real people we serve. That's what we want.
So, I've been through the background before, and one of the struggles was my employers, because I worked at Kohl's, which had 300 people, I worked at security, which had 1,500. It's hard, so how can a candidate make that up elsewhere in the PHQ? Because when they were going through, I called my own employer and I'm like, hey, do you remember me? And he's like, nope.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well,
There's just certain things that you're gonna have to,
but how do you make up for it? Like, I know it's gonna happen, and I know especially for all of us who've had that employer, how do we make up for it in the other
it's
parts?
just making sure that you're doing your best to be responsive to that background investigator who's trying to help you out.
Right,
Communication, doing all you can to make sure you've helped them out and that they don't feel like they're doing it on their own and that you aren't really invested into your career here.
Mhm.
And then just making sure that as a person, you're somebody that you're putting your personality up front, saying, hey, this is who you're hiring. This is who, you know what I mean? There's gonna be times, and we get that, that you work at companies or employers aren't real responsive to the police department. Imagine that, we get that. As long as you've made an attempt, it's not gonna look bad on you. We're not gonna hold it against you because your employer won't let
right.
us talk to us.
So for the PHQ, if our employer told us to put an HR number, what do we do then? Because obviously an HR person isn't gonna know us.
Yeah.
Do we just leave that blank then?
I would put it in there anyway.
Okay,
That way the background investigator, because you're gonna have an investigator assigned to you, will
right,
at least have a contact and they can say, well, I contacted them and this is what they said.
okay,
Even if it's nothing, they still have to fill out that block.
okay.
There's just so many times where you just have to make that check mark. Like, yep, we tried it, this is what we got, okay, move on. You know what I mean?
Okay.
I have a question. How far back does that investigation go?
Your entire life.
Entire life?
Yeah, I usually say 10 years, but depending on what it is and what kind of stuff happens, and we'll look at your entire life. Criminal culpability in the state of Colorado only starts at 10, so, but you still have to kind of just talk about who you are, and, if you feel like you've made mistakes, but usually it's about 10 years.
Do you need like exact dates of employment too, or?
We try to get, as specific as you can. If you can't get incredibly specific, because you just can't remember, just make a note of it. Let your backgrounder know that, hey, I did my best to get as close to the actual dates as I could. It might be a couple days off or whatever. I was the same way. I had the military and this and that, and I was like, man, and at one point I just talked to my background investigator. I was like, I did my best to try to get as close as I could, but one of them, I'm not sure, it was October or November. And they're like, oh, no, that's cool. Thanks, kind of thing, so.
Okay.
Sure.
Do you look at references at all in like an application process? Like, do you actually call them, or is it just?
During the background, we do. Yeah, and they'll contact not only references that you want them to contact, they'll contact everybody. Like, they'll contact roommates, they'll contact family. I had people call me up like, hey, didn't know you were applying for the police department. I'm like, dude, I haven't talked to you in like 20 years. But yeah, they'll call. They really do. That's what takes us, 8 months to do an application is we touch all the bases we can. We have a good relationship, I feel, with this city because of the officers we have and the communication we have. Obviously it can be better, but we want to keep it, we want to keep that relationship as good as we can for as long as we can. So we really want to make sure we hire the right people.
Go ahead.
A couple questions. One is, how available are you to these awesome students right here at this table to be, for them to touch base with you and to connect with you? The other is, when they apply, what's a good strategy in terms of them to follow up, following up on the application, the resume, that kind of thing?
So how available I am depends on what they have to offer me. I always say that as long as I'm free, I'll talk to anybody. And even if I'm not free, so what I usually do is somebody wants to come personally talk to me at my office, I'll say, hey, send me a couple dates that work for you and a couple times. That way I can go through my calendar, because sometimes I am just swamped and sometimes I'm not, and so just send me a couple dates and I'll be able to schedule it, and I'll put you on the calendar invite, and I'll literally schedule a time for you to come. I'll do everything I can to work with you. There's some people that expect me to do it on Saturdays, and I'm sorry, but I'm just not coming in to work on Saturdays. So, but during the week, I'll do everything I can to meet with you on a one-on-one basis. And I'm sorry, the second question?
When they apply, what's a good strategy in terms of them following up, like how often or when?
So we have a lot of applications. So just calling up because you haven't gotten an email within 5 minutes and putting in your application gets annoying, not gonna lie. You should receive communication within a couple, like I'd say 3 days, and then 3 working days, not like over the weekend. 3 working days. We have a lot of information to process, so I usually tell people, give us 3 days to go through it all. So that's why I kind of said if you had put in your application, give us 3 days before you get that email. If you haven't gotten the email by 3 days, write me or write Ms. Casting emails with Human Resources. It's either something went wrong on our end, or it's like in your junk mail or something, and there's a lot of really good information in there that you need to do your test. So definitely feel free to contact us, especially me. You can always contact me. But just realize that like Human Resources, Casting Mills, all them, they have a lot of stuff. So just make sure you've done your work and it's not something on your end that we already did. Again, I'm going to say it, it's part of the application process. You write me and you say, hey, how do I become an officer? I'm like, it's all online. Did you do anything? That's a little different than somebody says, hey, I was reading online about this. Can you explain that to me? They've done their work, they just need a little more explanation. That's, and I'm going to answer everybody anyway and be as polite as I can anyway, but, if you were owning a business and you were looking for somebody, you want somebody who's invested in your business already. You're looking for that. You're looking for that individual. So if they come and they're prepared, that's a big, thumbs up compared to somebody who just walks in and starts asking questions and is not prepared at all. So. But yeah, I'm available for anything. If you have questions about the application, always write us. Just make sure it's not something that you could have, done before without us. So if we had already sent you out the information or something like that. But does that make sense? We're kind of always open. I mean, you can always hit me up and stuff.
Officer Redmond, every semester, every year, I guess, I'll have students that are a little bit disappointed if they didn't come through that process successfully. So I wondered if you could speak to people that have returned to your process and have been successful?
Yeah, so it is a very competitive process. We have multiple officers on the department right now that applied 3 or more times and finally got accepted. I was at a job fair yesterday on Fort Carson, and this, really qualified individual came and was talking to me, incredibly professional, and this is his 3rd time applying. All his friends got picked up over the last 2 times, and he's the last one trying to get in. So it does take, it's competitive. We want to pick the best people we can. We're hoping we're making the right decisions just based on the process, but sometimes you might have to apply again. It's not a bad thing if you have to apply again. In fact, it shows us that it's something you want, and it's something that you're looking for. I get it. I get how discouraging it can be, because it is a lot of time. It is a lot of time, I'm not gonna lie. It's a lot of work just doing the application process. So when you get that, oh, so close, made it all the way down to the end, but didn't quite get in, it's discouraging. What I tell people is if you made it, first of all, through the first testing process, right there, you're one of the top people already. Because I have 1,700 applications right now. If you're one of the 150 that got selected to move on to the backgrounds, you're already one of the top people based on your scores. Good job for you. You make it all the way through the background, that means we didn't find anything in your background that's an automatic disqualifier where we're like, yeah, no thanks, see you later. That's another huge, good job to you. You made it all the way down to the hiring board. By then we're at like 100 people out of, 15, 16, 1,700 people. That's a huge good job to you. And you did something right to get that far. I know it's not going to feel that way. You're going to be mad. We wasted that time, but I try to encourage people saying that's a good thing. That shows you what kind of person you are. And that if you do it again, there's probably a pretty good likelihood you're going to make it all the way that far, if not get accepted.
So what point is the hiring board, is that right after the background investigation, and are like the psych tests part of the background investigation, or
So
where is all that?
yeah, and I'm trying to, I think I have more slides, but you don't need slides. So after you do your test, you go into the background, you fill out that big old long paperwork, personal questionnaire, and then you get assigned a background investigator. That investigator will do an interview with you. They'll kind of go through your paperwork, they'll have little stars like, hey, can you explain this thing you mentioned here? They just want to know your side of whatever it is that happened. You know, oh yeah, when I was in kindergarten, I stole a paintbrush because it was cool, and I didn't have a paintbrush at home, and blah blah. Oh, okay, and go on. That kind of goes throughout the background process. You should be in contact with your backgrounder. They might have questions about contact information for certain people, that kind of stuff. As it goes towards the end, you'll be scheduled for a polygraph. You'll have a psychological interview with our psychologist. You'll take 2 different psych tests, like actually written tests, just to make sure that you aren't like a crazy person, or you don't have tendencies to want to light things on fire. Just trying to figure out. And I'm not a psychologist, so I don't know how he kind of filters all that, but there's definitely tests that you take, and then at the very end, towards the end, there's like a physical where they just talk to you about, and it's between you and the doctor, about maybe ailments you have, disabilities you have, and whether or not it's safe to still be an officer and have those. We have some cool stories, but they just make sure that you can do the job safely and you're not a danger to the city or to the other officers that you work with. So that's kind of how it goes throughout the process. That's through those 6 months background. They kind of schedule, and they'll call you up like, hey, we need to schedule this polygraph. Sometimes something happens with polygraph, like, hey, there's kind of some issues with this question. We're going to reschedule you to come on in, and just because we don't see anything, but we just want to make sure, and you'll have to come back in and that kind of stuff. But it's all during that background process.
For people who don't make it in the first round, is it a good idea to go do the community?
Community service?
Yeah, the community service where you volunteer, kind of a community safety person.
Yes, so what I tell people, and again, I've been saying this a lot, but it's a competitive process. How are you going to set yourself above everybody else? I get that question all the time. Oh, what can I do to do better on the application? I'm like, well, a lot of that's up to you. I don't know who you are, what your passions are, but you definitely need to set yourself above everybody else. Whether that's volunteering, and it doesn't have to be volunteering with us. Obviously, I would love it if you want to help with us, but going down to the Humane Society and volunteering there, just showing that you're invested in the community, and you're that person that goes out and is a go-getter. And, I help with my church with the youth ministry, or we go and pick up trash along I-25, or whatever your passion is. Just showing that you're out there doing something for the community. That's always kind of something I suggest. We do have a specific volunteer program with the department. It's called the CAPS program. I have brochures for that today too. That's totally volunteer. You kind of go through the initial background process. I think it's a great program as far as face time with the department and networking with the department. You start kind of working with these officers that someday will have a say on whether or not you are hired with us. You'll start learning about the processes and how we do things. You'll learn about the department. You'll start meeting people in the department. So it's not only is it for us to see if you're a good fit, it's also for you guys to see if this department and policing and whatever is a good fit for us. So that's a good way of going, and it shows again that you're willing to go the extra step. We also have what he was kind of hitting at was the CSO program. which is the community service officer program. You probably see them drive around, they have like the green and white cars and then the yellow lights. What it is they're kind of like officers, except they don't have any sworn capabilities. So they don't carry a gun, they have no arresting powers. What they do is they're like the officer's helpers. So they do, like if you're on a traffic accident, they'll help with directing traffic. That way the officer can go and actually investigate the accident instead of being worried about getting run over or directing traffic and getting traffic flowing. So they kind of help in that way. They'll help facilitate the paperwork. They'll go on things where there's no suspect information. So like you get you wake up in the morning and somebody broke out the window in your car. And there's no suspect information. They don't know who did it. You don't know who did it. They'll go out there and they'll process the scene. They'll look for fingerprints, and then they'll complete the report and give you that report number. That way, an officer can go to the domestics or something where there's a suspect on scene, that kind of stuff. They'll also help officers on like burglaries and that kind of stuff with collecting evidence and some of the paperwork. So it's a really cool program because
They get trained for that?
there's an academy that they go through. It's only like a month long on Saturdays. And you're paid part-time, so it's like 29 hours is the most you can get. And you're working with officers like directly next to them. You're using the same radios, like the exact radio, same channel, everything. You're using the same report writing format and programs that we are. We pull up your reports, we work together on them. So I mean, you're literally an officer, just a step down. You don't have that commission yet. So it's really cool because you get great experience. You work with the officers. You see again how the department works. You see if it's a fit for you as well. We see if it's a fit for you, and then you get great stories. You start learning and asking these questions that maybe you don't even know you should ask. While you're out there. While you're going through the process. We've had great success with, and this was kind of something we didn't realize, but with the CSO program actually becoming a stepping stone into a police officer. We started the program because we were getting overwhelmed with calls. We were trying to figure out a way of getting more help for our money. It's because obviously they get paid a little less than a commissioned officer. So it gets more feet out there, more boots on the ground, helping officers out so we can get on to more calls. But a side effect that's been really beneficial for the department is it's a huge stepping stone to becoming an officer, and you're getting paid too.
So part of the volunteering, I actually live in Parksburg in Castle Rock. So I've since graduated college and more folks moved us up there. Can we still volunteer with our departments and still have it look decent? Like I did a bunch of hours with CSPD, but then it gets unfortunately uneconomical to drive down here all the time. So can we go with other departments and still?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And that's what I tried to explain is like, I'd love you to help at the department, and I mean, you're going to learn the department, and that's a good thing because like I said, we want to make sure not only you're a fit for us, but we're a fit for you.
Right.
I want you to want to stay in the department. I'm not trying to trick people into being officers and then going through the academy and investing all this community money into them just for them to be like, yeah, this isn't for me, pop, smoke, and leave. So that I think it's a great opportunity to kind of see if the department is something that works for you. But no, I mean, as long as you're invested in whatever community you're in, that shows that you're community minded, and that's what we want in our officers. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Here's my next question. This is gonna sound so cheesy, would it be a good idea to start now? Like my work's been just so out of whack, I can't even keep track of my own schedule, but it's recently settled down. So would starting now look cheesy? Like I've always done it, but with my work recently, it's just been
it's hard.
unrealistic.
Yeah, no. So I mean, we understand all that stuff. We understand you live north. We're going to look at all that stuff. We're just I'm trying to give you guys tips on how to kind of set yourself above everybody else.
Right.
And again, I can't like just say, this is what you need to do, you do this, you're gonna make it.
Right.
You kind of gotta do a little self-reflection, like, you know, I don't quite have time to do this, but there's this that I really would like to do, and maybe I can only do 5 hours a month.
Right.
But even just being able to put that out there, you know, during the background or during your interview, you know, you're doing an interview and, you know, that same question, why do you want to be a police officer? Or what do you think you can give to this community? Oh, well, right now, this is what I do. I volunteer at the Humane Society. I mean, I love animals. I love helping people. Because of that, I just can't help but do this stuff in my community, even though it's only 5 hours a week or 5 hours a month right now because I'm out working on my own. But it still shows us that, you know, you're working a full-time job, but you're finding time to do something, whatever it is.
Okay.
That's pretty cool.
Okay.
That's what I think, yeah.
So looking online, I couldn't find a lot of information about the community services officer.
Yeah, there's not.
So what would you recommend for like just looking out there and like the application?
So it's hired through the city.
Mhm.
So I don't have any input or like knowledge of when they do it. They do hire it, they run 2 academies a year, typically. And again, that's based on rollover. So depending on how many people move on to different jobs or stay. We could not hold an academy if everybody just decided to stay and there was no turnover. But we try to run it twice a year. So what I always tell people to do is go on our city website, and I can pull it up here for you in a minute and show you where all the city jobs are posted. And I'll show you exactly where the job will be posted. You can just check it. I'll check it like every week, every other week. And you can also fill out a job interest card, and they'll send you an email. I'm sometimes an untrusting individual, so I'd much rather pull it up and check it every other week myself than all of a sudden miss it and be like, oh, I didn't get an email. But
So they only post one opening then?
so they post the opening for it. I can't tell you how many we hire each time because it's dependent on how many people stay or leave.
And you know if that's 18 or 21, that age?
It's 18 years old.
Okay.
Yep, you can do it as 18. We have a lot of college kids that are going through and do that while they're going to school at nights or during the day, and they do this at night, so.
We'll reach into it on your behalf, guys, and you'll have that information in the next week. We'll reach out to those.
And I have that
websites.
brochure here,
Okay,
and I'll
great.
pull up the
Yeah,
the
we'll share it on our
application.
small website.
Yep,
Sounds good.
we'll do all that, that'd be great. Yeah.
For those of us who may or may not have applied in the past, you know how policing, you know how police departments are very hush-hush about what they disqualify you for?
Mhm.
How do we go about that? Because I've been disqualified in the background process, but the same application I submitted for Aurora, I got passed in CSPD. So they couldn't tell me anything. How do you go about something like that where you've applied, but you have no idea why?
It's a good question, and unfortunately, you're gonna get the same exact answer from me. We don't release it.
Right.
So it is hush hush, and I've even asked to go into the hiring boards just so I could see how it goes, and it's just been denied, and I understand why. So I can't tell you why people aren't accepted or all that kind of stuff.
Right, but what do you say to your background investigator when he's like, well, why were you disqualified? And you're like, well, I don't know, they're not telling me.
Yeah, we don't, unless it's a disqualifying behavior, so if we found, oh, hey, yeah, they did drugs for 3 years and didn't put it on their application, we'll probably let you know, hey, you were disqualified because we found drugs, you know, we found this person that said, you know, they did drugs and this, and, or we found this charge, or whatever it is. We'll let you know about that. That way, you'll have an opportunity to kind of talk about it and explain
Okay.
what's going on. But if it's just like, you made it, there was no disqualifying, you just weren't picked up by us, we don't tell you why,
Okay,
unfortunately.
right.
So, and I totally get that. As a perfectionist and an OCD person, I get it because I want to take that information, I'm good at receiving this feedback, and I want to change so I pass the next time. But unfortunately, we just don't do that. And I think it has to do with civil liability.
Okay.
Is what it is.
I wanted to ask you about your oral boards. How do you, how does your agency establish or make selections of the people who are sitting on your oral board? What does that audience look like?
So really what we do is we send out an email to all the officers, I think it's lieutenant and below, and say, hey, we're looking for oral board members. A lot of times it's the same people who enjoy doing it. We talk about being able to make a difference on who we hire, or have an impact. I shouldn't say make a difference. You have an impact on who is hired. So we send out the email, we get the people who, hey, yeah, I'm interested. We obviously make sure they're in good standing, good police officers on the department, work hard, and then we put them through training. Basically, we say, hey, this is what we do. You can't ask them specific questions. This is how long they have to answer each question. This is, the notes you need to write. We have different kind of keys we look for. Accountability, check. Integrity, check. Yeah, they said this, which showed integrity. Hardworking, check. We have these different keys that we teach them to look for.
Okay,
So they all kind of go through the testing,
great.
or the
About
training, I guess.
how many questions is the oral board?
12-ish, 10 to 12. It's not very long, but I mean, a lot of the questions are something you can talk about for a while, like, tell me a time where you failed at something, or you really had a hard time, but instead of quitting, you continued and you pushed through it and had a good outcome. Boom. And then, so it's something you can actually talk about, or, give me an example of some time in your life where you had to work for a supervisor that wasn't motivated and that treated you poorly and made you not want to go to work. And what did you do to confront that and to, continue on with that career, or something like that? Those are the kind of questions you're going to be asked. Or, there's some scenario, like she said, where you're an officer, you have a supervisor, or you have another officer you saw take something from the scene and put it in his pocket and not report it. What do you do? Then you'll have the opportunity to answer. It's those kind of questions, so they're more of like a narrative essay format.
For those 2-level questions like that, do you encourage or do you accept them taking any kind of notes to guide them through that question?
Absolutely.
Okay. Do you provide that note?
No.
Card, so they would be able to bring like a little notepad?
Yep.
Okay.
So you can't bring recording, anything that can record, so your cell phone has to be left outside. I wouldn't bring a purse or anything else, so you can keep that with the secretary outside. But if you walked in with a notepad, I would be very impressed. I've only seen that like twice.
Okay.
I do it because to get the specialized units within the department, they do the exact same thing that you guys go through. So like to get the recruiter job, I did the exact same thing you guys did. I went through an oral board. I had to write out like a resume. It's more, there is a resume when you do it internally, but I had to do a resume, and then I had to sit down and the exact same thing, hand me the questions or read me the questions, and I bring a piece of paper now because there's multiple times where there's 2-part questions. Like, always just ask me, I'm like, what's the second part to that question? And you can ask that. And they'll tell you that in the instructions. Hey, if you need us to read the instructions, just let us know. So if you do answer the first part of the question and you've been talking for a little bit, you can always say, okay, I know there's a second part of the question. Can you please reread the question for me? We'll gladly reread the question. It's much better than saying, I'm done. And they're like, you sure? I'd much rather, as I've sat on the board for close to 7 years, I'd much rather sitting on the other side of the table have somebody say, hey, could you read that question again? Yep, here, boom, and it's a 3-part question. You answer the second part and you're like, I'm so sorry. Read the question one more time for me, I just want to make sure I got it all. Sure, read it again. Yeah, the only thing I'd want to add is this. Boom, But yeah, taking notes, good idea.
Another element of the oral board, do you love it when a candidate comes in and shakes the hands of the members of
Absolutely.
this oral board?
So we teach our officers who are on the board that they're supposed to judge what comes out of your mouth, but every one of us are people, we're human. We all formulate first impressions, whether you like it or not. You always formulate a first impression. When I first walked in here, you guys had a first impression on me. I have a first impression on you. It's just how it happens. So your first impression is huge. It's huge. When you come in there and that's something you can prepare for, because you can't necessarily, guess what these questions are, but that's something that's easily controlled by you. So yeah, you come up, hi, nice to meet you. I'm Nick Ryan. Nice to meet you. Thank you for taking your time to do this. Appreciate it. Sit down, sitting up straight, being very professional. I mean, it's gonna go somewhere. Even though we tell our board members not to look at that, they're still gonna look at it. I mean, there's just no way of not. You know what I mean? We want to not judge you on appearance. We want to hear your words. But I would take that out of the equation.
What kind of questions are gonna be on, are they gonna be more scenario or are they gonna be more character based?
Character. We can care less about what your experience is as police officers.
Right.
So I was kind of hearing like some of the questions you were saying about Seattle, and I'm actually went to college up in the Pacific Northwest, and I completely disagree with their way of doing it. I don't care what your past is, and whether or not you can tell what fire truck goes and what person you grab first. I just don't care about that. I want to know who you are as a person, and whether or not you're going to be a good fit with the department. I can train you the priority of life. That's easy. And I can do that in 1 hour and say, hey, this is the priority of life within our department. It's, the victims, people, you, suspect. That's the priority of life. Boom, done, okay? So take this priority of life and use it to save whoever you want. That's fine. I'm more interested in, knowing your personality, how you're going to react when, a supervisor can be in with whatever, Chick-fil-A. How did you react when a supervisor yelled at you for something that didn't happen? That's the kind of stuff I want to know. So there's scenarios, but it's that kind of thing that anybody can answer. Not necessarily specific to law enforcement or any kind of policing stuff. You don't have to have any knowledge in policing to do this job. I had nothing. I was an art major. I was a graphic design in college with a theater minor. So I had nothing. Weird, I know.
So I know that you guys look for like volunteering and having like a job as a CSO, but what are some like smaller things, like maybe knowing a different language, GPA, doing ride-alongs? What are some like other things?
Absolutely. A lot of times we are looking for what you've done to prepare to be a police officer. When I came in, there was actually a question very similar to that when I did my interview, and I had read several books. Maybe, some of you are criminal justice, maybe, or most of you, or so you can say, yeah, this is something I did, or maybe, yeah, you did, I did 2 ride-alongs in a year. I tried it, and then I went up to Denver and I looked at that department, did a ride-along there. I just spent a lot of time researching, whatever, it is to you to be prepared on seeing if this is a career for you or not. Those are all going to come into factor. And a lot of that's going to probably come out in the oral interview.
Okay, gotcha.
So there's not like something I tell you to do.
Yeah,
I would say be true to yourself and who you are, but I would definitely make sure that you prepared for whatever it is. I'm becoming very political, I understand. Yeah.
Since you guys put so much importance in like the oral board and the writing, but not in the physical, is there like a high fail rate in the academy, or do you guys push everyone through?
We have a fail rate. It depends. Like we have classes that like we might lose one, and sometimes that one is just because maybe they didn't do the research, and they're in there and they're like, yeah, this ain't for me, and it's a mutual, okay, thank you, appreciate it, have a nice day kind of thing. People do fail out of our academy. I'm not gonna lie to you. There's people who can't do the driving test. They just can't. Our goal is to get everybody through. I work at the academy a lot. I'm a driver instructor, I'm a firearms instructor, I'm an advisor. I do all this stuff at the academy. Every time we're like, this is it, we're getting everybody through this time. Haven't done that yet. We always lose at least one. Again, sometimes that's a mutual, yeah, this just isn't for me, a family emergency, whatever it is, but we always lose at least one. Sometimes if you fail 3 tests, you're out. We do written tests every week. The reason I actually like why we do, I hate tests, by the way. I suck at them, but I actually like why they do that, because they get you so used to taking tests that even if you're a bad test taker, by the time the big state test that you have to take, the post-test, you have to take it at the end of the academy. We've tested you with all these stuff so much that by the time you get to the big test, it's no big deal. But yes, our goal is to get everybody passed. So even if there's something you're struggling on, I promise you, you'll have a mentor, a police officer on the street, currently an officer that'll be assigned to you. You can contact your mentor. He will come in, I promise you, he will come in if he doesn't, you call me, and help you with whatever it is. The instructors at the academy will also help you. So if you're having problems with shooting or arrest control or whatever it is, and you go to your instructor at the academy, say, hey, I'm really struggling with this part of it. They'll come in on their time off and they'll help you. I'm telling you, our goal is to get everybody through there. Yeah.
What's an example of a driving test that people fail? Is it like a spatial coordination type of thing?
That's exactly what it is. So it's cone course. We set up cones, and you have to be able to negotiate through a whole course without hitting a cone. By the time it comes to your test, you will have done it 50, 100 times without hitting a cone. And then we say, okay, it's test time. The stress kind of comes in, and then you do what I see usually is they start doing something a little bit different. They start overthinking it, and all of a sudden they're hitting cones. You're like, man, you just did it 100 times before this. You have to make it through. We give you 3 chances to make it through the driving test without hitting a cone. We teach you how to do it, and you've done it multiple times by the time the test comes without hitting the cone. We do lose people in the driving. Sometimes we lose like 1. We've lost, one time we lost like 5. And I think that one was more of it was a mind game, if I were to guess. You know, you had a couple people not doing it from the week before who failed, and they called their friends and said, this is terrible, it was horrible, nobody's gonna make it through. And then those people got all, scared and worried, and instead of just doing it and doing what they were trained to do, they overthought it. Kind of goes back to what I said at the beginning about the academy, is that we do induce stress. It's stressful. Policing is stressful. If you think it's not, then you are definitely in the wrong career. It is insanely stressful. There's times where not only are you wondering if you're going to make it out alive, you're wondering if the rest of the people you're around you are going to make it out alive, and you still have to make rational and sound decisions that are going to be scrutinized for the next 2 years. So you have to be able to work under stress. You have to. So knowing that, hey, I could fail out of this driving, but I'm just going to go in there and do it. I'm going to have fun doing it, and go and do your best. Those are the people that pass, and they do well. The very first day of driving, I tell people, have fun. If you're not having fun, you're probably not going to pass the test. You got to go have fun. If you're so worried about failing and you're constantly thinking about failing, what's going to happen? You're going to fail. What we think about is what happens, right? So you gotta get that positive in mind. I know I'm gonna sound like a promotional speaker at high school, but you gotta have fun. Don't let the thought of possibly failing, just nope, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna have fun, I've got this, and you'll get it.
I wanted to ask you if you suggested that students at this level or potential candidates seek out any training at this point in any self-defense program or shooting, or if you would like them to wait for academy training. And the backside of that, do you have a suggested reading list?
Good question. So as far as the training, I've seen it go both ways. We will train you even if you've never touched a gun in your life. And in fact, sometimes that's good because people develop really bad habits. So sometimes it's a lot easier to train somebody who hasn't gone out and gotten those habits because it's a fresh canvas. I can teach you how to do it right. I can show you how to hold the gun wrong or right instead of holding it wrong, or holding it wrong. And, I can teach you this, and I can develop these muscle memory skills from the very beginning. So you don't necessarily need to go get training in shooting, for example. I will teach you from the very beginning how to do it. I'll teach you how to take a gun apart. I'll teach you gun safety. I'll teach you how to shoot. I'll teach you how to aim. I'll teach you how to deal with it if you get certain types of malfunctions, and by the end of it you won't even think about it. You're like click, boom, chick, boom, boom, back up. And that's what we're trying to do. Muscle memory. That's what we're doing. We're trying to ingrain it so it's muscle memory, and we'll get you there. But I mean, I'm also not going to tell you not to go out and learn and see if shooting is something you can do and something you enjoy and that kind of stuff. I'm never going to tell you not to do that either, but you don't have to do that. We'll train you for it. Same thing with driving, all that stuff. We're going to train you, how to do that. So, then the question, reading list. I don't know. I would do a lot of I would do research and just I'm almost kind of cautious of saying that because you always kind of find the people online that, oh, police is terrible and I failed 16 gazillion times and this is what they did, and I'd be careful about that. I promise you we're trying to get everybody through no matter what you read. But I would still...
Do you have a source that you like as a professional policeman, anything like that you draw your information?
As far as preparing for police, I don't.
Okay.
One of the best books, this is more emotionally, is by Dr. Gil Martin. I'm trying to remember what it is. I'll look it up for you, what the name of the book is. But he does emotional survival for police, I think is what it's called.
Okay.
And it's about, so this is kind of getting way off topic, so I apologize, but whenever you're a police officer, there's always kind of that alert awareness that goes up while you're on duty, obviously. You have to be what we call hyper vigilant about what's going on around you. And so it's not like, when you're walking to class, you can, have your hands in your pocket, you could be daydreaming, listen to music, relaxing. You're not like that while you're on duty. You're constantly looking about who's around you, what their hands are doing. It's the officer's safety. You're trying to, take in everything. And then, to top it all of a sudden you get dispatched to a burglary in progress, and you go there and somebody's running out the front door and, all this stuff. So now you have all this adrenaline, and when you go up, you go back down. So it's talking about that. It kind of talks about the emotional, kind of leveling out that on your days off, because during your work week it's way up, and then you go home and you crash. And you come back up the next day, and then you go home and you crash. And so it's about still having a good life off duty as a police officer because of that stress, and it's really great. It's becoming so important that the last couple of academies, we've actually sent them to his conference that he does.
I'll have that book in our library next week.
Cool.
We'll get
Yeah.
some copies of it now.
It's really good, and it's right on. I mean, when I first came through, I didn't have any of this stuff. It was, they hadn't even realized about cumulative PTSD and all this kind of stuff. And I got sent the book after having some issues and read through it, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is it. And you're reading it, and that's exactly what happens. So it's a good book. I think, yeah.
Mine might be kind of a dumb question, but I'm gonna ask it anyways.
That's okay.
So do you guys have any preference on size?
No.
So yeah, because I'm pretty small, and I went to a counselor once here, and I was like, well, thinking of police department and blah, blah. She's like, well, you're kind of small. Are you thinking communication side?
Do not give me that person's name. I'll call him up in the office. No, so I use this example because I get this question a lot. There was a girl who went through my academy. She was about 80 pounds, about this tall, and she was very skinny. I can't even tell you what she does with our department right now because of where she is and what she does. She's an incredible police officer, incredible. And she got that way because she knows her limitations. Everybody should know their, like the Matrix, know your weaknesses, know your strengths. But it's stupid, but at the same time, it's very true. As an officer, you never know when you're going to end up in a situation where you're going to have to rely on your strengths and know what your weaknesses are. I learned to rely on communication with people and to explain, it's just such a powerful weapon your mouth is, you know, and we teach you how to use it and how to communicate with people. But that kind of goes back to some of the application process too in the oral interview. We want to see how well you are communicating with people because it's so important. So don't let your size, I guess a long answer to your question is, don't let your size get to you. We don't look for super big, strong people. That's not what we're looking for. We're looking for who you are as a person. We'll teach you how to be smart about stuff. You'll be able to evaluate situations and be like, you know what, I'm just going to wait for my cover, make smart decisions, and use your words. Not saying that there won't be times where you might have to go on physically with somebody, but if you've stacked the cards in your favor, you've waited for cover, all that will end up working out for you anyway. You can be a great officer and be tiny. You do, like, so when you come back and you're ready, you kind of hold it down here because they actually teach you about pushing. Because what happens is when you shoot, like if you're trying to shoot quick from down here, you're actually shooting as you go up and you always shoot high. So it's all about pushing the bullet towards your target. But we teach all that kind of stuff.
How many women end up going through the academy?
It changes. We were having, honestly, in full disclosure, we're having a hard time getting women interested in police, period. In my opinion, I think it's just been that stigma that you have to be big, you have to be ready to fight and all this junk, which again just kind of makes me upset. But that's changing, thankfully. Thankfully, I think it's changing. I'm trying to think of how many we had in this last academy. We had like, I'm going to say 15.
Okay.
Yeah, it's, yeah. I can give you, if you're really interested in statistics, I can go back and try to find
No, that's okay. I just wanted to
but
know.
the culture is definitely changing. Women are becoming more interested in it, and it's good because we need it. They bring something very valuable to the police department. And this department realizes that, and we really try to get as many women as we can. Of course, being fair with everybody, asking and all that, but yeah, you won't be alone.
I have a question. What kind of advice can you give to potential candidates as far as how police have been portrayed in the media and, you know, on the streets, everybody looks at their phone and everything else. So what kind of advice can you give to prepare for that?
So one of the biggest struggles with being a police officer is learning how to not let things affect you, I guess is a good way of putting it. No matter what you do, you're going to be wrong in somebody's eyes, period. You could be, like, you could literally come out with the perfect, or the terrible circumstances, come out with the perfect solution, and somebody somewhere is going to say how dumb and bad you did it. Just gonna, I've been on national news for things that I did right, you know? So it's a good question, but I'm going to kind of turn it back to that's something you have to prepare for, whatever that means to you. I kind of have to do social media with the job I'm in now with recruiting, but there was a point in my life where I stopped doing the social media because I got sick of seeing it. And then it affected me more than I wanted to admit. Seeing like these people, they're like, man, you don't even know, you're ignorant really because you have no idea what it's like to be an officer, but yet you think you do. And it just made me in a bad mood. I was like, you know what, I don't need this. So I stopped doing social media for forever and getting involved in that kind of stuff. But you do have to be prepared for that. This city here actually does a really good job of supporting our officers, in my opinion. While all this, I mean, I've been an officer while all this stuff, before it happened, during, and now, obviously now. And there are definitely times where I get the, you know, oh, hands up, can't breathe, you know, that kind of junk, and it's just like, yeah, okay. But I get much more of people walking up to me and thanking me for what I do than I ever get people flipping me off as I drive down the street, that kind of stuff. And I really do think that's specific to this city, because I talk to other officers from all over the country, and they get a little more of the bad stuff than they do the good. So you just have to be prepared for that. So I personally suggest having a good support network outside of work, whatever it is. if it's, you know, your family, church, clubs, you know, whatever it is, whatever your interests are, again, you know, just making sure you have that network and that you're keeping up with that network. Your friends can't keep you accountable and making sure you're doing okay if you're cutting ties with them. And sometimes that happens where you come in and I mean, this job's really fun. So you come in and you make really good friends here on the job and you start cutting ties, not on purpose, but with your other friends. And I've seen officers become incredibly burned out and not even realize it because they didn't have somebody outside of the job that was there to kind of keep them accountable. You know what I mean? Somebody that knew them and was like, hey, you know, kind of changing, you become a little more angry. I see that you're drinking like every night a lot. We kind of need to talk a little bit, you know, because it's not something you come in thinking that that's how you're going to end up being. I remember sitting and doing my research, like I said, about being an officer. I'm like, I'm never going to be that way. And then pretty soon, there was one time I was with my wife, called me out, was like, hey, we're not at work anymore. You know, I'm like, oh, that's a good point, you know. So you really do have to kind of set up those checks and balances before you start the career. Have family, hopefully you have family that supports you in your decisions. If not, friends. Like I said, clubs, whatever it is your interests are, make sure you have people there who know who you are and are willing to keep you accountable. And then continue to spend time with them.
Teachers.
Teachers, yeah. My wife's a teacher, so we're all about teachers, yeah.
Would you suggest like applying to like X amount of departments rather than applying to like a bunch at a time? Does that look bad on certain applications? Like to have like you applying like 10 different departments?
So that's a good question, and it can go either way. If I am looking at your application, I see you've put in for 15 different departments, then it shows me that you're not heavily invested in Colorado Springs. But we also understand that there is no way I can guarantee you a job.
Yeah.
And I want you to be successful in life, even if it's with the county or the state. And we're all friends. I mean, we're all friends. You heard some of the stuff that you've said lately. And we've been that way for a long time. We always work with the county and the state and different agencies. And I know all the recruiters over there. We're always looking for the right spot for you. If it's not in the Springs, I will gladly get you in contact with the state trooper, Trooper Harris, who's in charge of recruiting for the state. Gladly, because I want the right spot for you. I'm not trying to convince you to come to Colorado Springs if it's the wrong spot for you. Because not only is that not right for you, it's wasting the taxpayers' money and it's wasting my time. You know, I want to make sure you're where you want to be and doing what you want to be. So, I mean, I know that's kind of not the easiest answer in the world. I would say you can definitely apply to more than one place. Just be careful shotgunning it too much. But we, again, understand that we can't guarantee you a job, so you gotta look out for number one, which is you, right?
Mm-hmm. For those candidates that are considering, or the students that are considering CSPD, do you offer incentives for a career development ongoing, such as tuition reimbursement, if they want to see grad school opportunity later, or things like that? Yeah,
we do. We have the city provides quite a bit of different benefits. One of them is tuition reimbursement. We get 2 classes a year that they'll pay for. The one catch is you have to write basically a letter saying why you need it and how it's going to benefit the department. So you can't go and do welding, you know, or something. They're probably not going to pay for it. I mean, we'll gladly support you in that if that's what your passion is, but it's probably just not going to be comped by the city with taxpayer dollars. But if you go and you're looking at like criminal psychology, I guarantee you're probably going to be able to get that for 2 classes a year. There's a lot of officers that go back and get, you know, masters and doctorates and PhDs and all that stuff while they're in the department over the 30 years that they work, 20 years that they work there. And there's a lot of other benefits too. I mean, we, like one of my favorite ones, just to kind of jump on that bandwagon, is since you're an officer, there are times you're going to work holidays. and that kind of stuff. So the city gives you all those city holiday hours as vacation at the beginning of the year, which is 88 hours. So that's over and above just your normal accrued vacation. So right at the beginning of the year, I can pull up my vacation and stuff, and 88 hours that I haven't even earned yet for, to use for that year. So I mean, there's a lot of other benefits as well. I mean, we have, health and all that junk, and it depends on how much you pay for it, but there's definitely benefits to being a police officer that way.
Can you use VA benefits while you're going through the academy?
You can, yeah, you can pull from your VA.
Awesome.
If that's what you choose to do, your GI Bill, is that where you're kind of
Uh-huh.
Yep. You sure can. So,
So I know a lot, or not a lot, my question is, how much of the time on the job do you spend testifying in court? That's one thing I've wondered about.
yeah,
because I know
it's
that's
a
something
great
people
question.
do.
Really great question. I haven't gotten that question very often. So you'll get a lot, what happens usually is you'll get a lot of subpoenas, which is saying, hey, we need you in court this date at this time for this case number. You'll probably get, I'd say 30 or 40 a year. Actually showing up and testifying, you probably do maybe 5 times a year.
Okay.
It really isn't that much. And honestly, a lot of it dependent on your report writing ability, making sure you've closed the case and you haven't made mistakes. The more complete you do a case, the less likely it is to go to trial. I mean, they're going to look at the whole case, they're going to read the report, and if they're like, yeah, we're not going to win this, they're going to plead it out. Like, hey, take a plea deal to a year deferred, or whatever it is. They're going to want to do that. If you've kind of gotten lazy and maybe you didn't check this source very well, and you didn't pull this video at all, even though you should have, those are the ones that end up in court.
Okay.
Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah.
I know it's kind of hard to say, I end up in court all the time, but then there's the homicide guys and the major accident unit guys, they go to court a lot more. DUI officers go to court a lot more, but just on patrol, I'd say 5 times a year I testify in court.
And then another question is, because you're talking about the other departments, so normally you start out as a police officer, correct? And
That's
then
correct.
you apply for the positions. What kind of things helps you with going forward in your career? I guess?
Sure. It's who you are as an officer. I mean, a lot of it at that point becomes your portfolio within the department. I always get questions about canine. Everybody wants to work with the dogs. And it's very, very competitive within the department. A lot of people want to be canines. So again, not only are you working hard, do you have good stats? Do you do a lot of reports? Are you out there getting stuff done and not just sitting around? That's the kind of stuff they look at. But what are you doing to kind of prepare yourself for the position?
Yeah.
We'll train you to be a canine officer. We'll send you to all those classes. But if you have somebody who's, maybe doing a decent job at patrol, and then you have another person who's they're doing a really good job at patrol, but they're also volunteering and helping with canine, they're doing this and they're doing that, that's probably going to look a little bit better.
Okay.
And then it's also an interview, so you do the same exact interview where you have to come in and explain, whatever questions they ask.
Okay.
And a lot of them are, what have you done to prepare for this?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Did I get it for you? Okay.
How long do you have to wait before you do a specialized?
3 to 5 years.
Okay.
Which goes really quick. I get that question a lot, and I always think, wow, 5 years. Yeah, but the first year, you have no idea what you're doing. I'll just tell you right there, 90% of the calls, you're like, oh my gosh, okay. And you go in there and you act like you know what you're talking about, and then you leave and you're like, oh. Or you call somebody like, hey, this is what it was, it right? Yeah, okay, good. It goes quick. I went almost 11 years before I even looked at doing something different, just because it's so dynamic. There's very, very rarely do you go to the exact same call. Very rarely. I mean, even if it's oh yeah, this is domestic and this is domestic, every time, they're dealing with people and situations, and every time it's different. there's a lot of times where I'm like, I mean, even a year or two ago after being on for, 8 years, I'm like, good question. Let me get back to you on that. I have no idea. So, long answer short is we're really looking for you to learn how to be an officer first, because everything else is based on patrol. Patrol, I mean, you have to investigate, you have to follow up leads, you have to take evidence. I mean, it's not like TV stuff where the CSI come out and do it. No, our CSI, most of the time are sitting in the labs testing the stuff that officers collect. We collect all the evidence. So you're learning how to, do the photographs, the fingerprints, DNA. Officers are doing all that work. So you have to learn how to do that at a very base level on patrol. Learn how to investigate, and then you can become a homicide detective once you've kind of gotten that base. So that's kind of why we make sure everybody has a couple years of patrol first. But it can also depend on the unit. So that's why I say 3 to 5. So on that pay scale I had showed you, we're at the P1 through 4. A lot of times we'll say we want a P1 officer plus 1 year. Like for SWAT, a lot of times they'll do that because they want somebody who's been out and experienced all the different stuff, because now they're going to have to do it at even a higher level of stress. So they want to see that person and see them go through these years of experiencing patrol first before they can become the expert, right? Because now not only are they patrol, but now they're the expert and they're the ones that patrol calls. So, I mean, like V&I, if I get some sort of drug that I don't know, I'm going to call up V&I, like, hey, this is what I got, what do I do? So you become the expert when you go into the different field, the different specialized units. So you kind of have to have that patrol experience. But what's cool is once you get your couple years in patrol, you can go and do a specialized unit for the rest of your career, if that's what you want. I mean, you have guys that stay in patrol for the rest of their life because it's so diverse and fun. But then you have people who are really into financial crimes. Their mind works that way, not mine. But they're able to go in there and figure this stuff out, and so they go to the financial crimes unit for 30 years, so. And then, after a couple of years, if maybe that's not for you, you want to do the major accident unit, you can go over there for a couple of years. And then maybe after that, you're like, I'm tired of being on a pager and getting called out in the middle of the night. You can go back to patrol, or you can go and do property crimes, or, whatever you want to do. One of the greatest part about being an officer, especially here, is that we're a big city, we have a big department, so we have full-time positions just about for anything you could imagine. I have a full-time position for it. So,
When you promote, do you have like step raises for each position, or like how does that work? Like if you were an officer and you promoted to like a detective or something?
Oh, okay. No, so like right now, since I'm the recruiter, I can go and I can be a detective on homicide as an officer. There's no promotion from patrol to detective. They're still all officers, so you're still going by that pay rate I showed you before. The next real promotion is if you test for sergeant, and then that's like where you get the next kind of pay bump, and that sergeant is just in charge of the officers underneath them. So that sergeant can go, usually to start on patrol, it's the same kind of mindset, you have to go on patrol and learn that for a year or two, and then that sergeant can go and be the sergeant of homicide or the assault unit or whatever it is.
So a first line supervisor of those other units, okay.
First line supervisor. So there's no pay change from going from as an officer, as a P1 officer. There's no pay change for me to go from recruiting to SWAT to K9 to patrol. I can do all those jumps and make the exact same money. There can be a little bit bump in pay just because you're on call with SWAT. So if you're on call for a certain amount of time, they automatically give you 3 hours just because of the inconvenience of being on call and not being able to leave the city and all that kind of stuff. They give you 3 hours of bonus time. And then your overtime is always time and a half. So if you're in an on-call unit, you get called out, technically you're getting paid more because you're getting time and a half. So there are kind of benefits to being on call and that kind of stuff, but it's not like you're promoted to being a SWAT officer. If that makes sense. Did I answer it? Okay. Those are great questions.
Okay.
Wow, one more, kind of off topic. At the Medal Valor lunch, there was an honor guard, and they were doing like a routine. So what is the honor guard?
So they're volunteer to do that. So one of them's a community relations officer, a couple of them are on patrol. There's all these different things you can also just volunteer for. And you go and you do training, and they work with each other, developing those routines, at nights or whatever, and they get paid to go do it. But it's not like something we force people to do. It's just like an extracurricular thing they can do if they so choose to.
It's not a post-translation, it's something in addition to your assignment?
Correct, yeah, addition, that's a great way of putting it. It's kind of like we have our SWAT team, and then we have a backup volunteer SWAT team. So the SWAT guys are the ones who go out and do, their stuff. And then if they have like a big scene, they've also been training with these backup on-call SWAT people. And so they'll be able to call them, be like, hey, we need help, come out to this thing. And even though all those are, detectives and patrol and all that, they all have their other primary job, they can get called up from it to go do this SWAT stuff. Or like the major accident unit's a great way. So there's 4 full-time major accident detectives that just go to the injury TA kind of thing, accident kind of things. But each one of them has a group of volunteer officers underneath them that they're in charge of. So they'll be on call for a week at a time, so once a month. And then his team will be on call with them. So I'll be, a patrol officer, I'll be doing my job on the street. Something happens, I'll get the call like, hey, we got a fatality over here on Powers Boulevard, come on out. And so I'll, get a hold of my supervisor and go, hey, got it called out, I gotta go over here and do this now, and you go over and do that job. And there's a bunch of different things like that as well.
So if you say like you're on CSPD for like 5 years or whatever, and then you move out of state, what is like the process? Do you have to get certified in a different state, or is that like, what is the process of like the lateral?
So there's a bunch of things that come into play with that. It depends on the state. Every state is different, and it depends on the agency you're wanting to move to. So we train you to be certified in the state, which is a good thing, because then other agencies throughout the nation know that, hey, they're certified in the state of Colorado to be an officer, and a lot of those states have the same kind of certification for them. So where Colorado Post, Nevada might have a Nevada Post. That's the exact same company, same standards, same everything that they use to kind of say what the standards are for policing. So from Colorado, if you're going to Nevada, you would contact that agency in charge of all officers in the state, like, hey, I'm certified, here's all my information, and they'll look at it, and a lot of times they'll say, yep, you're good, you have all the training you need, we'll transfer your certifications to this state too. And so then you can technically, by the state board, be an officer in that state. Now, you have to go to the specific, department you're looking at, like, hey, what do you require? Because for us, like if you were coming from Florida, coming to be an officer with us in Colorado Springs, I'd be like, cool, it doesn't matter, you're gonna go through our academy anyway. We put everybody through the academy and we're just gonna recertify you. So don't even worry about it if you don't want to, because we're gonna do it for you anyway. So it's kind of up to the department as well. The real benefit to the post thing is once you're certified in the state of Colorado to be an officer. So if Colorado Springs wasn't the place for you, you can always go up to, Manitou or, somewhere in the mountains or out on the plains who maybe has a smaller department, and they don't like paying for people to get trained because they don't have their own academy. Then you're going to look real good to them because you're already trained and certified in the state to be an officer.
It's incredibly cost effective, I believe, to associate that level of your career with an agency. Because if you go to Pikes Peak and try to do post independently, the cost is pretty
just like going to college. Yeah. That's how we were able to certify our academy to get college credits for it. It's just like going to college. So, and what's cool, like I said before, but I'm telling you, it's a huge benefit, is we pay you I mean, we employ you as a city employee to sit in classes and go through and get this certification, this state certified certification, so it's pretty cool.
Another question, is there an age cutoff or like an age bracket that you look for in the vetting process?
No, you have to be 21, but I did hire, like I said, just because that's legal age to be able to carry a weapon. As far as maximum age, I mean, we just had somebody graduate in January who was 54 years old.
Oh, okay.
I had 2 people that were close to 50 that went through my academy. So as long as you can physically do it, you're good to go. So yeah, there's no age.
So what's the, like, when you do a academy, what is the, like, average age of people in there?
It's all over the place. Sometimes you'll have a younger academy just because of how things worked out. Sometimes you'll have a little older academy. I can only kind of really testify to my academy. When I went through, I was, 26 years old when I went through it. There was somebody who just turned 21, and then, like I said, there were people that were 50, 55 years old. So we really are, like, we try to separate that out. We can care less what the age is, we're looking at the person and making sure that they're the right person for us.
Okay.
There's a huge advantage to both, to having the young blood, real exciting people who, want to be in there, and then there's also, I feel, an advantage to having people who maybe have done other careers and are ready to do it and bring all that expertise in. So we see the advantage in both.
So for being young, would you recommend like just having some type of experience, like other than like the police, just in your life?
Yeah, and that's kind of where I kind of hinted about doing volunteer work and going out and doing whatever it is instead of, I'm not saying not to have fun on your off time and that kind of stuff, but just showing that, I'm young, but I'm ready to do this. You got to show the department why you are going to be just as good as the 32-year-old who's getting out of the military. Just to be honest, that's who you're competing against, so you got to present yourself in a way that's going to make you competitive to that person as well, if not better.